So we've got to multiply the last number with the first over here. So that gives us negative 45. We have to come up with two numbers. So that's when we add them, we get 4. Well, 45, clearly one of them has to be negative. I could do 15 times 3 or 15 times negative 3. If I add, I'm not going to get 4. And if it is 3 minus 15, I'm not going to get 4. What other options do we have? 9 and negative 5. If I add those two, I'm going to get 4. So a squared plus 4 going to split it up this way. Now, if you recall, Nemsha last time had her own way of doing this. Now that's fine, it is going to work out for this particular problem. It's not going to work for every single problem. So do understand the process. So a squared plus 9a minus 5a minus 45. What do we have in common? A. If I pull a out, I would have a plus 9. What do I have in common between those two terms? A negative 5. You may say, well, can I just pull out a positive 5? You can, but you cannot factor if you did that. So it has to be a negative 5. So if you take negative 5 out, you would have a plus 9. What do we have in common now? A plus 9. If I pull a plus 9 out of the first term, I have a. Out of the second term, I have negative 5. So that is the factored version of a squared plus 4a minus 45. Do this one. So just because we have m times n here doesn't mean that we have to treat this problem any different. So 20 times 1, 20. So I want to split 20. In a way, I get 12 when I add the two numbers. 20, 5 times 4 is 20. But if I add, I'm not going to get 9. Excuse me, 12. What should we use other than 5 times 4?
10 and 2.
10 and 2. 10 times 2 is 20. 10 plus 2 is 12. So we will have m squared plus 10 plus 2 m times n plus 20 n squared. M squared plus 10 times m times n, 2mn plus 20 n squared. What do we have in common in the first two terms? M. So if I take m out of m squared, I'd have n. If I take m out of the second term, I would have 10n. What do we have in common in the next two terms? 2n. If 2n comes out of 2mn, we'll have n. 2n out of 20n squared, we'll have 10n. What is in common between that term and that term? M plus 10n. So I'll leave behind m and 2n. Good. So negative 56. I like to pick the wrong numbers so that you can understand. I know the answer pretty. So don't just follow stuff just because I'm doing it. So I'm going to start with the wrong numbers. One of them has to be negative because I see negative 56. I'll start with, say, negative 28 times 2. Negative 56. But if I add, will I get negative 1? No, not going to work. If you cannot come up with the other factors, just pull a 2 out from here. You will have negative 14, 2 times 2, 4. Yes, negative 14 times 4, negative 56. But when you add, will you get negative 1? No. 2, move it over there, negative 7 and 8. Negative 7 times 8, negative 56. But when you add, would you get negative 1? No. So you're almost there. You sort of know the two numbers. They're off by a sign, so we just have to switch the signs. So if it is negative 8 and positive 7, negative 8 times 7, negative 56. And if I add, we'll get negative 1. The negative in the middle, I'm going to split it up as 8 plus 7 times xy. If I distribute the xy, I would have x squared minus 8xy plus 7xy minus 56y squared. What do we have in common in the first two terms? X. If x comes out of the two terms, I would have x minus 8y. What do we have in common in the next two terms? 7y. 7y comes out of 7xy, I would have x. 7y comes out of 56y squared minus 8y. What do we have in common between this term and that term? X minus 8y. If I pull that out, I would simply have x plus 7y. I go back and forth between parentheses and brackets, but you can put parentheses if you want. It's not matter. Are we clear?
So there's no difference between parentheses.
12 times 1. It doesn't matter if I have x raised 4, x squared. All I'm interested in are the numbers here. 12 times 1, 12. I want to write it in terms of factors. I'm going to start with 4 and 3. 4 times 3 is 12. But when I add, I'm not going to get 8. Yes? So that's the wrong combination. What else could give us 12? 6 and 2. So 2 times 6, 12. If I add 2 and 6, do I get 8? Yes. So x raised 4 plus 2 plus 6 times x squared plus 12. As I went around, for some reason, as you distributed this, you dropped the square. Just went away. Imagine you had 10 squared amount in your pocket, and all of a sudden you just dropped it and kept 10. Would you be happy? No, huge difference, right? So when you distribute it, the square matters. What do we have in common in the first two terms?
X squared.
x squared. If x squared comes out of x raised 4, what would we have? X squared out of 2x squared. Two. What do we have in common in the last two terms? 6. If I take 6 out of 6x squared, I'd have x squared. 6 out of 12, 2. What do I have in common between this term and that term? Okay. X squared plus 2. X squared plus 2 out of the first term. X squared out of the second term. 6. You can always verify your answer. How would you do that? Foil or distributed back in. You should get that. So, sure, you can go with the process that we did so far and start with negative 52 times 2. But how big of a number would you have? What is negative 52 times 2? Negative 104. It's not that big. But if you can simplify the numbers, it's great. In the sense, I have a 2 here, a 2 there, a 2 there. Do you agree? If I pull that 2 out, x squared in the first term, 2, if I take out of 30, 15x, 2 out of 52, negative 26. Not only am I trying to make these numbers small, it is always easier if that coefficient, the number right next to x squared or the first term, is just 1. If it's anything else, it's going to cause confusion. Yes? So by pulling this 2 out, I have 1. Multiply negative 26 and 1, we get negative 26. What should the numbers be? 13 and 2. So 13 times 2 is 26, but I have negative 26, yes. So what other numbers do we have for 26? 26 times 1. Negative 13 and 2. So the reason why I picked this is because you have to know how to split the numbers and when to stop. So negative 26 here would mean you need one number to be negative, correct? So negative 13, 2, or 2 and negative 13. And you should stop right here because 13, is that a prime number? Yes. What do we know about prime numbers? We can't, factor them more. That's the best I could do. So that's it. No other factors. Negative 13 and 2 isn't going to give me 15. 2 or negative 2 and 13, it's the same thing. Guys, didn't say anything. Negative 2 and 13 isn't going to give me 15. So in that case, that's the best I can do. Good? Because you cannot directly factor this. Now, I'm going to make a slight change to the problem, and everything is going to change. Good. It only took one side. again, I have 2 in common. If I pull that out, x squared plus 15x, 52. If I take 2 out, I'd end up getting 26. Yes? 26 times 1, 26. We know the only way to factor 26 using numbers other than 1 is 13 and 2. So 13 times 2, 26. If I add, would I get 15? Yes. I can split the middle number. (13 plus 2 times x) x squared plus 13x plus 2x plus 26. Good. Now, what do we have in common between those two? X. So x. If I take x out of the first 2 terms, I would have x plus 13. And what do I have in common between the last 2 terms? 2. So if I take 2 out, I would have x plus 13. Now, what factor is common between that term and that term? X plus 13. We take that out also. There is a 2 out already. So 2 times x plus 13 times x plus 2. Good. So it only takes one number to mess it all up. But you should know when to stop. And in this problem, you did this and you can't go any further. And you may say, well, I'll keep on trying. You just cannot because one of them is prime. There's nothing to do about it. Good.
So it's only the factors.
Excuse
me. That's only one of the factors.
Yes, because if you have, say, 4 over here, and then you ended up with 17, that's the best you could do, because you can split that 4 into 2 and 2. But that's it. Right?
And you have to leave the 2 parentheses on the side. It just goes like that.
Yeah, it's right here. So if you distribute FOIL, this will match the. Oh, no. So first step, we have an x in common, so we can pull that x out, which would mean we have x squared minus 4x minus 45. So the number here is negative 45 times 1. And we want to split. Let's start with something funny. So negative 15 times 3. It is 45. But when I add, do I get negative 4? No. Once you have these 2 factors, you can build from here. So negative 5 times 3 times 3. Yes, I just split negative 15, wrote it as negative 5 times 3 times 3. Negative 5 times 9 is negative 45. When you add 9 minus 5 would give you positive 4. But we want negative 4, what should we do? Swap the signs. So 5 and negative 9. With good amount of practice, You will be able to just recognize things right away, but it takes practice. So x squared plus, going to split that -4 as 5 minus 9 times x minus 45. I'm going to leave that x outside as is. So x squared plus 5x minus 9x minus 45. What do we have in common between the first two terms? X. If I pull x out of the first two terms, I will have x plus 5. And what is in common between the last two terms? -9. -9 out of -9x would give us x. -9 out of -45 plus 5. What do we have in common between this term and that term? X plus 5, so x times x plus 5. We'll leave behind x and -9. And that is the factor. Good.